Nemecek and Dr. Ali Matu with a very special guest joining them. But let's get those two guys out right now. Let's get this party started. And by party, I mean Life Support Live.
Hey everybody.
Hey.
Thank you, Bonnie.
You're very welcome.
Thank you. And thanks everybody.
Yeah.
Yes, we got folks.
Hello everyone. How's your Friday been going? Wait a minute, Larry.
Yes.
We have to introduce the show.
We do have to introduce the show.
Yeah.
Do we have any, for 2 years in the pandemic, Ollie and I did a show called Life Support Live at 10 a.m. live stream, live cam, every Saturday with very few exceptions. For 2 years.
And now we're here.
And I'm just curious, do we have any lifers in the audience? Oh, okay. That's awesome. We can't see you, but we can hear you. That's great.
This is a show where we use Star Trek to explore how we can boldly go in our own lives to better ourselves and the rest of humanity.
Oh yes, as a famous starship captain used to say. And as another famous starship captain said once, we will also have a little fun along the way.
Hello everyone, I am clinical psychologist Dr. Ali Matu.
And I am Larry Nemecek, Dr. Trek. One of us is a real doctor.
And we will leave it to you all to determine who that might be. Larry, we are back. We did this last year.
Yes.
Almost to the day 1 year ago.
We did 2 years on the Saturday mornings, and everybody was sad when we had reasons to say pandemic was
very
ending.
sad time.
But we said, look out, be careful what you wish for, Lieutenant. We will do specials from time to time. We've done virtual Trekland, and yes, last year was the first time we did it live on stage with an audience and with a guest.
And who was our guest?
And the great Sir Lofton was our first guest. So today,
we were thinking about this, Larry. There's a lot happening in the world right now. I don't know if people have been noticing, but there's a lot.
There's usually a lot happening in the world, but right now, what's happening right now?
It's happening a lot.
It's what's happening right now in the world,
yeah,
and it's a lot.
It's a lot of it, and so we were thinking about who could possibly be a guest who could represent someone whose character is close to us in terms of the issues, the conflicts, the opportunities that we face.
From Star Trek, you mean?
From Star Trek. Yes.
And who's here today?
Today. So,
hey,
Dr. Trek, who is joining us? Who do we have coming out over here?
Are we plugged in here? Yeah. Oh, you know what? I didn't even check.
Well, it's been a long road getting these slides up on the screen.
It was 6 hours from, from LA.
When it comes to people and characters and issues that are so close to what this world is like, we thought Star Trek Enterprise is the obvious choice in terms of series, and when it comes to characters that represent the kind of issues that we're dealing with, it became pretty clear that Charles Tripp needs to be
The third.
needs to be our guest. So please, everyone, give a round of applause and welcome Connor Trinneer out to the Life Support Live.
Do we have our... Hey! Man, thanks so much, Connor, for doing this.
Good to see you.
Connor Trinneer, you know him as Trip Tucker, but you also know him from the Decon Chamber now, right?
Yeah.
Yes. Absolutely.
And it's Charles Tucker III, you guys. Come on.
I threw the third in there, but yes, yeah. So let's do a little briefing room here. So yes.
Yeah, this is the first part of their show here. We talk about how these themes of Star Trek really interact with mental health. And we have a lot of fun along the way. And Connor, your character, when I was thinking about this, has dealt with so many of the kind of issues we're going through right now. Brand new technologies, sometimes that you've never seen before and are going to have huge ramifications on society, completely changing cultures, interacting with cultural change, and related
I was going to say
xenophobia.
alien cultures, and then
Yeah.
people you thought were humans who seem to be acting pretty
Yeah,
crazy.
the
Like
really excellent Terra Prime conclusion to Star Trek Enterprise. Trip went through a lot. And he also did it with a smile on his face, with friendship, with love, with compassion. What do you think it is that helped Trip to navigate so much change that was happening all around him?
It wasn't always with love and happiness. When his sister passed, that was a whole sort of dark period for the character. What is it about Trip? I think that he's an eternal optimist. I think that he always thought that he could get out of any scrap that he was in, and was willing to listen and willing to accept change, which isn't always easy.
He really seems so flexible in how he approaches new situations and trying to be honest and be present. And Larry, was this a part of the character from the get-go?
This is what I don't think I've ever had a chance to do. So you audition, you make the process, you get the role. You're an actor, you got a role. It's a regular, it's a network, and it's a Star Trek. So it's exciting. And I remember how excited you were. I remember the TCA premiere rollout the night at Paramount when they had everybody there. And you were excited, as was everybody. But you got the show Bible, they gave you sides to read as an audition. They go, well, he's the chief engineer, he's kind of the main three of the show with the captain in the first one. But everything that's happened along, as an actor, you sit down and you look at that, and you go, okay, and then you get the first script, or two or three, and you got to start inventing your own subtext, right? Whether the writers give it to you, and then little bit by little bit, the writers, I mean, where did you see the character at the beginning? Or what's the process for starting? You know you're going to be on a series for a long time, and it's a blank slate, but you got to have something to act with, right? And they start throwing scenes at you. So
I had no idea.
Yeah.
I thought I was Scotty, which meant that I was going to have a lot of days off. and then I read the pilot and realized, ooh, I've got a lot more going on here than I thought I would.
I'm more McCoy than a Scotty.
Well, I was part of a triumvirate. I mean, you know, and so at the moment that I got the part, we never got the script until way into it after we had the job. I mean, it just said, good old Southern boy, good with engines.
Right, blank slate.
That was it, literally. There wasn't anything. And I had thought to myself, I don't really dive too much into this. The thing that's wonderful about series television is that you can slowly sort of discover the past that they're meant for you to have.
Yeah.
So I'd have myself, I'd worked up an accent from Oklahoma. Mm-hmm. Found out later he was from Florida. And I said to I said to Rick and Brandon, I was like, I'm not even doing Florida. And they're like, they're never gonna know. And I was like, the people from Florida are gonna know. So there was that. So I had.
But didn't they kind of put him in the Panhandle, which is kind of the hickier part of the southern part of Florida?
Careful there.
I'm being cultural here. I'm just.
Yes, they did.
So that helped.
But that wasn't my creation of my character. I had this guy in mind that he was from Oklahoma and that he had grown up working on like NASCAR engines and happened to have a gift for that. And that's as far as I got because I didn't know what the relationships. I wasn't going to invent a relationship.
Right.
So you just have to, open your eyes to what's presented to you, and then that slowly creates a character history. I didn't know I had a sister.
Right. Until that
when we started, I had no idea. I didn't know anything about my own family, so it would be.
I bet they didn't know he had a sister at the beginning.
I know. Well, look, if you're writing a Bible for a show, you're writing a series Bible, and I think maybe they did know, but I don't have the answer to that.
Yeah. Well, actually,
I hate to be the therapist on the stage, but what a parallel.
Well, if you're not going to be the therapist on the stage, who is?
But there's such a parallel there between how you had to approach the character and the flexibility and not knowing where this is going to go, and what Trip also experienced, leaving Earth, boldly going, not knowing what is going to be there. And I think many of us feel the same way. We call this show To Boldly Go in Uncertain Times. When we launched in 2020, it still feels like uncertain times. And this idea of being flexible, not knowing where you go, it seems like such an important.
I was going to say this actor's role journey at a pilot on a series is kind of like life. It's like we launch with ideas, but we don't know what real life is going to throw at us along the way. Whether it's our we caused it, or it's acts of God and fate or whatever. It's kind of, I'm sorry, that was sound like shallow profundity, didn't it? But it is the thing, right? You've got to be open to what they're, because I hear actors and Star Trek actors who they come up and they have to have something to work with, and then like you said, it's about the accent there. But you come up with something and they throw you a total curveball later on, and you go, well, you have to go with it because that's what they want to do with the character.
Yeah, if you want to make a parallel, listen, the only way that you're ever going to be successful on a set where initially you don't know anybody. You're there to do a job, you don't want to waste anybody's time. And the only way that you're going to be successful is you can find some kind of calmness in what you're doing. Because if you're acting nervous, it shows. And you may be nervous, but you have to, breathe deep and trust in your abilities and listen. That's the secret to acting, is listen. It's not the acting part, it's the listening part. Nobody ever says a word unless they have a desire for it. People don't just throw words out. You have an intention, there's meaning to it. It may even seem superfluous, but it's not. So you have to be very sensitive to the things that are coming out of your mouth. You have to be sensitive to the environment that you're in, and you have to be sensitive to what people are saying to you and about you.
Yeah. Did that change for you over the course of the show? What helped you to be present, calm, and listen?
You mean from the beginning until, say, halfway through season 1? That never changed. It's the level of not thinking I was going to get fired changed. That's the truth.
No, that's ingrained paranoid actor. That's, yeah.
Yeah,
Is it going to work out?
So, fake it till you make it. But don't let them see you sweat. It's listen, walking into an alien environment, no pun intended, like a set that you've never met anybody on, and you've got you've got all of this newness around you.
And a lot of pressure.
And it's just the reality. You can't alter the reality. You have to live within that place, and you have to find whatever it is that you need. Tricks. I believe that there is no such thing as over preparation. I think that preparation gives you a freedom to operate within the parameters that you're set in, but it's preparation as much as you can. It's very difficult on a series television show to have the kind of time to really invest in the 9 pages that you're shooting the next day when you've gotten the script 2 days prior to that. So, but again, everybody's got the same situation. That's what you're doing.
Right.
So you just got to figure a way to do it. And I think you also have to be a little kind and forgiving to yourself. Because getting in your own way is just going to waste people's time and yours.
Yeah.
I mean, Larry, this is something you and I have been talking about. It's so nice to have this convention in January because it's the start of the year, but it already feels like so much has happened in this year. So much of the Star Trek family has been impacted by the fires in LA, and appreciate you, Connor, on the decon. You guys have been talking about this and where people can go to donate and help. There's a lot happening in the world, and I think that is critical advice for all of us. Like, what is our calm? What is the thing that helps us to be present and listen to one another on a day-to-day level? And that it sounds so basic, but it seems so necessary right now.
Yeah, I would say, especially in what's been going on in Los Angeles, and we've got actors here who've lost homes, and it's been interesting in talking with them that there's a certain level of freedom and starting over again, not being scary, which is a blessing. And at some point you go, it is what it is. And so then what do I do? Do you wallow in it? Does it, ruin your life for a while? Okay, if that's the deal, then own that. But you're gonna have to find a way to keep moving forward, put one step in front of the other and do your best.
Right.
That's one of my favorite things about Enterprise. I think the show has, I just did a complete rewatch of it last year. And how relevant it is, I think it's just gotten better with time. And I love the theme song. I have fond memories of watching the show and my friends and I singing along, belting it out every time. We had a whole interpretive dance performance of it.
Do you remember any of it? Can you do a little bit for us?
Yeah. What's the line? Not gonna bend or break me? Yeah, I would do this thing with my arms. Not gonna bend or break me, as if like my arms were bending. It wasn't very good, Connor.
No, but you're slipping into his decon host trap here.
But you went for it, and that's what's important.
Yeah.
But rewatching it, I think that's what's so great about all of the characters is you encounter all of these struggles, all of these new species, some friendly, some not. There is the traumatic events of the Zindi attack, losing your sister, your character's sister, but then also later on the clone daughter as well.
Well, do you want to go? The thing about you're talking about starting off with an empty slate because you don't know what they're going to throw at you, which is true of anything. But it's a Star Trek, so the things they're throwing at you are really going to be like off the charts, like Trip being pregnant. I mean, that was like the third or fourth episode.
It was the third.
Yeah.
That's a lot to throw at you in an early episode.
That wasn't what I expected. I just put it down.
That's why they called it unexpected.
Yeah. So you had the new technology there. You had this new human experience, and moving on forward in the series.
But you guys, as opposed to the other Treks, it was supposed to be halfway between NASA and Kirk and Picard. It was supposed to be new for you guys, and not ho-hum. Oh, this was on page 97 of the
No, we were the first ones out.
Right. So that was a dimension you got to play with that was different than everybody else, and for the audience to see. Yeah, and everybody creating shows. But I mean, some of these shows it's funny because you were talking about the engineers thought you'd be Scotty and have days off, but then the other like Geordi and O'Brien. There's the Geordi must suffer and the O'Brien must suffer, and boy, Trip suffered plenty, the way they like to talk about it.
Is that a thing for the engineers?
Yeah. It's apparently now is a thing for the engineers.
No, I didn't know that.
And B'Elanna, my God, she had her heart traumas and things. Yeah.
But
it seemed that as part of the troika there originally and all that, it seemed like that Trip had his share of that. It seemed like from all different angles, and then it got into family and.
I mean, if there isn't every man on that show, it's Trip.
Yeah.
So.
And rewatching it, what struck me is like episodes like Cogenitor is how much I could relate to Trip trying to understand and really struggling to understand the culture. And I think that's what's so great about Enterprise versus the other series is guys, we're a lot more like Enterprise than we are Next Generation. Next Generation is the aspirational goal, and Enterprise is so much closer to where we are right now. Yeah, and working through that conflict and working through the mess of it.
Well, I'll tell you, the way in which Cogenitor came about was I did go to them, the them being Rick and Brandon, and said, I think that Trip has to get caught with his foot in his mouth. I mean that because it seemed as though he just got scot-free with anything that he sort of messed around with.
Right.
And then this episode comes around, and he messed in that relationship, and she ultimately commits suicide, and he had to own his responsibility and his role in that. So that was a turning point, because I will honestly say, when I think in the beginning, in the pilot in particular, he's not very sensitive at all.
Oh yeah.
But he
well,
becomes,
he's the boy that never got out of his hometown in a way. And he's the one that hadn't been out at all, right? It's the first time he's been off Earth, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah.
Outside of orbit, maybe. But yeah, he got to play, and then we watch him grow, and he does have a great growth.
And that's something that I think we need a lot more of, is we all make mistakes. We all put our foot in our mouth. And it seems harder now with social media and all of these, our mistakes feel so permanent. But as you said earlier on, being flexible with yourself, being a little forgiving of yourself, seems like something we all need a lot more of right now.
Yeah, and less making excuses.
Yeah, and then, see, the traumas are the ones that are the great drama, like some of the highlights of the series, and then similitude in Simtrip. Wow.
Yeah, that was interesting as an acting challenge, because the Sim character had to be slightly different than Trip, but not a lot that you would identify him as different. But I had to play him differently, and it's interesting to play a character that basically has a death sentence. His time's going to be up, and he doesn't want it to be. And to have to play that as well, and sort of keep that in your head as to how you're going to play a scene, versus someone who expects to have a long life, like Trip. So it was an interesting case study in death.
What did you think as scripts come down? You guys see them, and you never know. Obviously, don't know what's going to happen. Don't know what's going to happen. All the characters. What's the plot? What's the arc of the show going to do? And you come along, and here's Trip in the engineering spouting lines, and then you get a similitude. You get a cogenitor. Do they warn you to say, hey? Do you get it when you get it, like you get it on that day of the week, and you're like, oh, this is a me show. Okay, gotta.
That's how you get it. You just get the script, and then you read it and interpret it as quickly as you can. I've been fortunate that I've been given some really Trip-heavy episodes early on. Yeah. And, the longer you live in the skin of a character, the more natural it becomes, and the decisions and choices that you're making, you're honoring the character. So I think that by the time Similitude showed up, even by the time Cogenitor showed up, I don't know where they sit in the chronology, I was very excited. I was very excited about Unexpected. I also thought to myself, you also have to honor your idea of what it would mean to be pregnant. And I didn't want to make fun of it, because it'd be very easy to do that, having a man be pregnant. There is humor in the episode, but you know, a lot of our population's been pregnant and I haven't. So, you
Well,
gotta...
there's your starting point.
Well, yeah, I mean, but I remember sort of adding things in scenes that, again, it's like, he's hungry all the time. He's emotional. You know, all these things, these ideas that men have about what it's like for a female to be pregnant. And I did the best I could. I mean, but I did try to honor the idea that I was actually telling the story of what the experience would be for a man to be pregnant, as strange as that sounds.
Yeah.
And as we get to the final arc of Enterprise, you're dealing with the Terra Prime storyline, Trip and T'Pol's relationship, and this rising xenophobia on Earth. I mean, what was your impression of that? A lot of people seem to forget that Star Trek is this utopian story that comes out of a dystopia. It comes out of World War III. And Enterprise shows us the forces that were working sort of against this pluralistic, diverse, optimistic
By the
society.
time we get to that point, the pushback to the jump ahead.
Yeah.
However, the goal of the Enterprise ships going out was a positive one. It wasn't negative, and we were living in a difficult time, and we are again. I mean, we will again, and I'll tell you, our show would not have been the show that you saw had 9/11 not happened. Our show was radically changed by the events of that day and what happened after that, and I think it gave a new direction for the show. And again, you think about shows that happen in times when they happen and why that happens. MASH. And then you think about things like, you know, or All in the Family, all these things that are floating around in the zeitgeist, and we take bits of them and we tell stories and we make art and music about our own experience. I mean, you know, grunge music happened for a reason. It didn't just come out of nowhere. You know, it came out of a place of discontent and lack of hope, and people were pissed, and it was put in that music. And, you know, you look at, you know, the art of, say, Basquiat. It's almost like it's chaos, but there's beauty in it, and I think that artists' job is to hold up the mirror and interpret it the way that they will.
And then watch what you, the audience, or you, the viewer.
I don't think sometimes people care as artists. You know, they just have a need to put it out there and express themselves, and whether or not you see it or it matters to you is up to the viewer.
Yeah. Yes. Well, and speaking of the 9/11, so we jumped about the xenophobia, but also the personal loss, and whether anyone knew it or not, now you have a sister. Wait, she got mentioned, I think, a couple of times because she was there to use in this indie year for that whole arc and what it meant for Trip and this indie.
Yeah, I don't believe I knew that she was gonna die.
What?
I don't think I knew that.
Yeah. Well, until they did it, but I mean, they started to give you just bits and like he's from Florida and he likes this, and you know they were filling those things in, and then I think when they wanted the trauma that launches your arc during the Zindi year, they decide to use her for that.
Mm-hmm.
And every time I see this, I just see the promenade there at Paramount, but it still was a shocking scene. And then the poignancy of coming back around and naming the baby, I guess was right.
Yeah. That was an interesting time. I just found out that we were going to have a baby. So, you know, you see that scene where he comes in and talks to Paul and he breaks down. That was Connor, like, really having a hard time trying to tell this story. So, yeah, that was wild.
So, you kind of mentioned how much Star Trek Enterprise was shaped by the events of 9/11 and so much of what we were all going through during that time. And also how it helps you to have that calm point in the day. So what was helping you then? You found out you're going to have a baby. This storyline is a difficult one for many reasons.
And the show was canceled by then. You guys knew we were in the end days.
We were done.
Yeah.
That's right.
In a Mirror Darkly Part 2, I think, was filming that. Was when they found out.
That's when we found out. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, there was a lot of goodbyes going on. But I will say that, the difference in 9/11, by the time that we went back to work after 9/11, I really was fairly lost. I was like, what am I doing? I'm on this TV show, and, I thought I had my dream part, and the next thing I know, the world had changed drastically. And I was at a low point, and I called my dad, and I shared this with him. That I felt like this is silly. I need to do something more impactful.
Yeah.
And he said, I totally disagree with you. At the very least, you're giving some people once a week an hour to, not think about what's going on, or you're helping people with the knowledge that there's going to be another episode coming next week and life goes on and you're moving forward. And that helped me a great deal.
And of all things, to be in that it's a Star Trek. So you're automatically throwing people the best future hope that the TV was going to give them.
Yeah, but I don't remember feeling that way.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it may have been not close enough to the other tones you're talking about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Connor, I was one of those people. So I was 18 during when 9/11 happened, just going off to college, lost, just like you. And Islamophobia was high. Yeah, being named Ali was not so much a nice thing to do. It was really terrible flying with me.
I bet.
That was not fun. But what you all premiered pretty soon after 9/11, if I remember correctly.
We filmed some, but the premiere was right after 9/11.
I don't remember. We had filmed stuff. Yeah, we were working.
It was either a week or two. It was pretty close. And so I was lost as well, and one of my weekly traditions became watching Star Trek Enterprise and then calling my best friend, Lowen Baumgarten, who's right over there, who lived in D.C., not too far away from the Pentagon and the attack there. And our ritual became watching Enterprise and using it as a way to talk, connect, and just be with each other, even though we were far away. And I know I'm not the only one. I'm sure if you could let us know by applause if Star Trek Enterprise was a core part of your ritual, something
grounding in the craziness
Yes.
after 9/11,
Yes.
the uncertainty. Yeah.
Yes, and you definitely served that purpose for us.
Well, thank you. I began to feel that way, and I'm so thankful my father had the perspective that he did.
Yeah, dads are good that way. Something occurred to me, and then we'll jump on to our next bit here. This whole thing about keeping the empty slate, the writers fill it in, you need something in the moment, but you have to be open to what's coming down the pipe. There's a thing, and now the modern treks are all streaming and serialized in the way they're set up, but the old days, the OG days, and Strange News, getting back to this in a way, was the standalone shows. But then they're still cogenitor, there's still similitude. There's those shows that individual characters have a really impactful moment where it's not just, I've got 5 lines, 1 scene this week. And yet...
If only.
And yet they're cranking out that 26 a year, but as an actor doing that, some of the criticism in general of the standalone shows is something, and especially the old days. It was like, the original series was like, here's this huge life-changing moment, and no one ever talks about it after that. Or it doesn't seem like it made any difference, And then maybe some radical, crazy young writer comes in and refers to something from second season. Oh, what a concept. But things have moved along. Did you, as an actor, ever have a moment where something's happening in the script, and these especially, I say the traumatic show, but the big shows for Trip, and something doesn't feel right, like, hey, we're totally forgetting that he went through this or had to do this or had to adjust. Did that kind of thing happen often? where you had to say, remember a new writer?
I don't recall that happening.
But you know what I mean about the standalone shows, and people say,
Yeah,
oh,
I do think that there were probably some conversations with the directors, and we had such a great corral of directors, many of them former, Star Trek actors.
Jonathan LeVar.
Yeah, Roxanne, Robbie, and I think that Michael Dorn, and I think that there's so much happening, at least with my character, that you can't wear that baggage all the time. You have to still do your job. You still have to, have relationships with people, and then you have the opportunity, just like in real life, where you're just going along and moving forward and going to the grocery store, and every now and then in a quiet moment you have, or something sparks you, and you're reminded, or you touch in on what's really going on with you. And I had the real luxury of having opportunities to express those things, in particular with like the Zindi arc and what happens with Trip's sister.
Yeah. You want to move on?
Yeah, let's move on to the counselor's log. This is the part of the show.
Very short part of the show. We're doing a little bit of a deeper dive into some of the mental health going on. So I was in my extensive research for today, which was
watching TV.
Yes. That is my wife will come and go, what are you doing? You're watching Star Trek again? I'm like, no, this is research.
Yeah, I do that.
You said, didn't you hear Larry and I are going to start doing the Saturday morning show again?
I do the same thing with the decon chamber. My wife, Jeff, you'll walk in, what are you doing? I'm watching an episode of Star Trek. Again? It's research. We've got so-and-so on today, or tomorrow, or whatever.
This is for work. One of the things that stuck out to me is movie night. I love movie night. So, we have applause for both movie nights and maybe movie nights on Enterprise. But Connor is you. Trip is your character.
Don't confuse me.
These are the things.
This is a mental health thing. Don't confuse me.
Yes. Doctor, I'm going to have a session with Dr. Trek over there.
I'm just letting you do it.
Yeah. One of the cool things about Trip is he organizes these movie nights. And I remember T'Pol was like, I don't know about these movie nights. But everyone ends up coming, and it becomes this regular event where you're all gathering to watch a movie, but it's also to be together, to sit, to share, to have. Phlox loves that popcorn, he loves those snacks. But
he loves watching those humans.
He loves watching those humans, yeah. But I'm kind of curious about movie night, because I think this is one of those things that really does help the crew in so many ways, to have this ritual, to have this routine, to have this regular opportunity to be together, lower stakes, and to talk. So I'm just kind of curious if there's anything in your discussions that came up about this, or what do you think this meant to your character?
Well, I think that he enjoyed planning them. I wish there'd been more of it, to be honest with you. I think that we wish we could have explored movie night a bit more. I think there was some mileage to get there. But other than enjoying the company of people smiling or being affected by whatever movie that he chose, he certainly didn't like any new movies. Apparently.
It's that grand Star Trek tradition of all music is old.
Yeah.
And even in your time, all movies are old movies. Yeah. Now, it functionally, sir, it was usually a light moment, right?
Yes, it was.
Occasionally there would be something, but it was usually
if there was a darker moment, it would be an introspective moment for a character in the show that you were just seeing them maybe not enjoying or taking in the movie, but they were having that time, to, I don't know, maybe evaluate or just suffer in some silence.
It's so nice when all the rest of Star Trek seems to be, the recreation seems to be going to the holodeck. And people are doing, they're really using their imaginations. They're diving into these characters. It was so nice to see Star Trek characters just watch some media and hang out together.
Yeah.
It's not only relatable, and was the thing I was doing, but it's such a good reminder that this is something important. It's important that we should find a way to come together using whatever excuse we have. Movie night, game night, whatever it might be.
Star Trek convention.
Star Trek convention.
Well, you look at what they do in the military. They have movie nights. You've got people dying, and you've got a lot of stress that I can't even imagine. And then you'd have a movie night, and it's a time to sort of let loose a little bit and just enjoy a couple of hours that's not otherwise plaguing you at times. So,
Larry,
Is it that time?
it's that time.
Okay.
I'm not singing. I swear to God, I got to sing later on tonight. And I got to.
That's right.
I gotta save my voice.
This is it's you guys' night too. What time is that at?
I don't know, 3 a.m.
There, okay.
No, it's at 10 to 11:30.
The character. Well, what you're referring to is a segment we had on the show called K3 Factor, and the reason it was K3 was because in the original series, the only reference to anything about mental health or psychology was McCoy's little bio bed, the left side when it says brain, K3, for whatever that meant. And we were like, okay, well, that'll be our thing. So the K3, you want to say what the K3 Factor?
K3 Factor is Larry's segment. I don't know why I'm introducing it, but this is where Larry does a deep dive into some part of Star Trek history that we might not know or be aware of.
It relates to the theme.
Relates to the theme.
From the real world of Star Trek.
From the real world of Star
Not
Trek.
the shows, not the fiction that we've talked about. And
Larry constantly is trying to stump me and bring in
it didn't.
something that I
It wasn't
don't
a
know.
goal, but it just kept happening. So
So
now,
what do you
but I'm
got?
also
What do you got for me,
curious.
Larry?
I'm also curious to see if. So speaking of show Bibles, this is. Can I close it? Can I do this? No, I can't. This was the original first edition. This was when it was Jackson Arthur and T'Pau. Did you know this?
No.
Okay, here we go. Oh, you're an easy. But you do know that Tripp's original name was Charlie.
Spike.
Yeah, and that the nickname was Spike.
Funny
Okay.
story. I have a funny story for this if you want to hear it.
Of course. Nope, sorry, we have no time.
Okay. So when we did those, what were they called, the CTAs, or were the ones where the advertisers came to Paramount?
Right.
And we were still shooting the pilot, and John and I, John Billingsley, he was part of this. It was late, and we were drunk. And we had to work very early the next morning at the sewage treatment plant in Long Beach.
Oh, yeah, for the pilot.
Yeah. And I get this great idea of like, well, listen. So Paramount owns all the liquor, and we work for Paramount. Why don't we just take some home? So I jumped behind the bar and I grabbed 4 bottles of booze. We stuffed them in our jackets. And we get home and I wake up the next morning not feeling well. And get to a day where I'm literally smelling sewage and not feeling well. And I get a message that when you get home, Rick Berman wants to talk to you.
Ooh.
I think I'm fired. So I get home and call the office, and Rick says, he's like, hey, buddy. And I thought, okay, that's a good start. And he said, listen, so there's already a spike on UPN, what was it, Angel? Yeah, Angel and Buffy. And we had done several days of shooting where I was Spike. And he goes, we're going to change your name. And I said, to what? And he goes, we're going to Trip. I said, great. Is there anything else that you wanted to say to me? He goes, no, man, that's it. Anything else you want to talk about? And I said, nope, I'm good. That's great. Fantastic. See you tomorrow. I was convinced he was going to fire me.
But then you got a lineage. You got to be the third. And
No one found out.
No.
Yeah.
Oh, they probably knew. But I didn't get in trouble. I never did it again.
Well, and, you expect Billingsley to pull something like that, but no.
I blame John, actually.
Did you? Yeah. Did you know that originally they had planned it that Tripp's best friend and the crew was going to be Mayweather? And that I say Dominic, and that what was his name? Reed. That Malcolm Reed was supposed to be a real oddball that was off to himself and was like a weapons guy that was just like the strange little British guy that liked it, and he was off to himself.
I will say that...
and then they saw what was looking on film, and you guys gravitated to each other, obviously.
In the pilot, we have Mayweather and Tripp do have that scene where we're upside down, and I did think for a minute that we were going to be, I guess, closer than we wound up being. Not that we weren't close, but just exchanges. And, being a friend. But that didn't materialize.
That's one of those, mid-court.
But I'll tell you this.
There's tons of them.
What you're reading here, this Bible, or these first versions, we're the last ones to know. I promise you, we are the last ones to know. We get the pages at the last minute. We get scripts that are sometimes half done, 3/4 done. We're shooting them over the course of 3 weeks. So you've got to remember what you're doing at different times, especially once you get later on in the season. So, I didn't know any of this stuff. I did know the Spike thing.
Yeah.
You know what's...
And I knew that. I just wondered in the years since if any of this had come, the fans had come up to you and said, did you know this or that or whatever.
No, I don't.
And T'Pol was originally going to be T'Pau, who was the character that was the matriarch when Spock fought on the original series, but then they realized they'd have to pay Ted Sturgeon's estate every week, so they made it T'Pol, not T'Pau.
Oh, well.
And then had her be the guest character.
That's why we weren't called Star Trek Enterprise for the first season.
Yeah.
To not pay Major Roddenberry's estate.
Wow.
Exclusive.
Think about that for a second.
And because it's Enterprise, what else could it be besides Star Trek?
Yeah.
What I think's really interesting about that is not getting the scripts or getting half-written scripts, not seeing the Bible, all of these kind of things. We never see that. What we, as viewers and fans of the show, we see this final product and it seems so perfect. And we have no idea how the stress or the anxiety or the uncertainty that you must be dealing with, which I think is, again, something that is so common right now. I mean, so many of us are dealing with these worries and stress and distress, and you don't see it. We can't mind read each other. We don't know how much we might be struggling with this until we have that conversation.
True.
So, you ready for your away mission?
With that away mission,
a couple little tips here.
This is the away mission. This is the part of the show where I give you all a way to apply what we've been talking about to your own life, and it comes back to movie night, which I am missing right now, Larry. My daughter is very upset.
Ollie, you said you would do this panel, so I'm sorry if I'm interfering with your movie.
No, okay. It's all good. It's all good. But inspired by Tripp, inspired by your character, Connor. I was thinking about what's one thing that we can take away from this character that we can apply to our own lives. And I think the key is really about having some type of regular in-person ritual, whether it's movie night, whether it's game night, whether it is inviting over some of your friends or doing a live stream like you all did, a watch party. Yes?
This is mostly a fandom audience.
Yeah.
And the idea of game night or movie night or watching their live stream, it's not that uncommon, but still good advice.
I really hope that we can make it more of a ritual for all of us, and in person, which I know is really hard. It's really hard to do.
It feels harder since
things are
back all the way.
No, we're not, and things are solitary. And I have a cousin who's very immune compromised, and I understand how difficult these things are. But it seems so critical now for us to find a way to get together in person, just for the sake of being together. Seems so important now. And for us to find a way to do that, as Tripp did with movie night, I think this is what we all need.
Human beings operate that way. We don't operate as solos. We need our groups, we need our tribes, we need our communities, and that can be your group of friends. But you're definitely right, and it's we are a ritualistic sort. It's what we do.
And it's what helps us, especially in times like this.
And I think 22 and 23 we're like, okay, we're back, but I think that's still out there. It's not like we did that for 6 months and now we're all good again. I think we're still on a healing return, bounce back.
Well, I've got a 19-year-old and watching what those kids went through, we're not going to know for a long time exactly what
a whole generation
that whole thing was about for them.
Yeah.
What
it took away, what they have to bounce back, or pieces. And the 6-year-olds versus the 10-year-olds versus the 14-year-olds versus the 18-year-olds.
Yeah, I mean, our kids went through this in at such a time where your development as a person and as a young adult was just obliterated.
Yeah.
And I see it in my family. Screen time, which is all you had back then, hasn't really changed, and I feel for them. I really do.
Yeah, schools were the stabilizing force for young people, and that was completely turned upside down.
And now they're still doing online classes, which I have a huge problem with. I mean, you know why? Because it's easy, not for the students. It's easy for the schools and the teachers. They have a responsibility to have these kids in a classroom where they're exchanging ideas, exchanging energies, and having a relationship with a teacher and other students. But to sit there on a screen is an absolute disservice to anybody learning.
Right. And we weren't wired that way, and maybe we can get there in 500 years or 1,000 years, but that's not the way we are right now.
No, I mean, I could never, ever, ever learn lines and memorize them off of a computer screen, because that's not how our brains work. I had to have a piece of paper in front of me. And the expectation that these kids are going to be able to have that ability to succeed based on the experience I just said it's really disappointing to me that I mean, my son, he's taking online courses in community college. No, go to school. Yeah. Go to school. It's what it's for.
Get out. Meet people.
Yeah, it's worked for thousands of years. Why stop now?
Find friends, find mentors, find proteges, find opposite sex folks you want to date. I mean, get out and
whoever you might want to date. So this is.
Oh, but yes.
There's so much.
I'm back in 2001 now. Yeah.
Connor, you mentioned this is how it's worked for 1,000 years, and so much of society has flipped upside down with technology in the last 15, 20 years. As much as we can get to some kind of in-person ritual, I think that's what we all need moving forward this year. We've got time for maybe 2 or 3 questions.
I was going to say, if we got just a
let's
couple.
open up those hailing frequencies. We've covered a lot of stuff here. We've covered TRIP, we covered mental health, we covered so much stuff. Does anyone have a question they'd like to ask? We can barely, there's such bright lights, we can't see anything. There's someone in the front over here. Yeah?
Okay.
I could say something from here. In the old days on the ships, when I started going to sea, we used to transfer between ships movies, and we would watch movies in the mess hall. And as technology increased, now they stream it on the TVs, and everybody has TVs individually. Not necessarily for the Navy, but I don't know about the Navy, but I know about the Merchant Marine, which is what I was. And but the Navy, we worked for the Navy, and we would transfer movies back and forth. When we're transferring fuel, we would transfer movies. And everybody would well, I'll give you 2 of these for 1 of these. And we would have popcorn and everything. And the whole crew, officers and the non-officers, we would all go in the same mess hall and enjoy with each other.
Yeah.
It's communal exchange is what that is.
Yes, it was. So that's what I wanted to tell you.
Are you saying that now that things have gone to streaming, that everybody's watching and that's been lost?
On my last ship, DirecTV, we had DirecTV on my last ship when I retired in 2018, and everybody had DirecTV in their rooms. However, I made sure for football, there was always something going on in the mess halls, so that way we would all be together, especially Super Bowl. So
At least something to be communal.
Yeah.
I think that's another
That's all.
great point. There's not a lot of live events where communities come together anymore. Sports might be one of our
Starts like
last,
the last one, yeah, and election nights or something.
Oh.
But I mean, where it's actually live.
soon, Larry.
It hasn't been scripted. There's a quality that, and I'm not going to watch it later, because if I watch it later, the whole world will know. They'll know the score. They'll know who won. Versus, I'm just in my little show and I'm going to stream my show when I'm going to show it. I'm going to watch it. But yeah, it used to be we'd have huge ratings because people all watched the finale of MASH together, and people all, anyway.
Thank you for that.
Thank you. That was a great point. Any other questions?
Hello. There's a mic.
There's a mic. Oh, we have a microphone.
We
Hi.
have a.
Hi. I actually don't have a question, but I just want to publicly thank Larry and Ali for doing Life Support Live during the pandemic. For those of you who maybe didn't tune in, they were literally saving lives every Saturday, including mine. So you can still see them all. I still go and watch the old episodes because sometimes I'm like, I'm just struggling with something here. What do the docs have to say about it? Strongly recommend. So just thank you guys for doing that. And like I said, literally saving lives.
There we go. Thank you, Charlotte. And thanks for wearing your Life Support Live shirt today.
That's
That
a
was
hard one.
sometime.
Hard one to follow up.
I've heard
That
so many
might-
people on both sides of the camera of Star Trek say, especially people that worked a lot of jobs, guest stars and crew people, but everybody. It's like, I have all these jobs, and sometimes they're either horrible shows because they weren't good quality, or they're detectives or murders or whatever. It's like the shining thing that people always take away was I worked, whatever I did with Star Trek, I did a Star Trek, and it's like that's the shining thing. It's the one thing that people want to talk to them about. If they are 30 years later, that's what people want. They don't want to talk to them about Matlock or mystery movie of the week or whatever, murder. They want to talk to them about Star Trek, and that's always just a thing to be connected with. Is always I would think. Don't mean to put words in your mouth, but there you go.
I want to thank you,
Yes.
Connor, for talking Star Trek with us, for going behind the scenes and boldly going to all these wacky places that Larry and I like to go. So thank you so much for being here, Connor.
And
pleasure.
hopefully, Connor, a little bit different kind of panel, maybe.
Oh yeah, I'm gonna have to lie down.
I got some openings. I can help you out. And thank you so much for
Everybody.
staying with us. We hope you have a
So-
wonderful Friday, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your convention.
Yes, Decon Chamber, and you all are on tonight with the karaoke.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, we are.
Yes. Ollie's around, and I'm at my table all weekend, guys. Thanks so much.
Thank you.